So, Sonic Colors. I want to talk a bit about this game. This video, as you probably have already figured out by this point, is barely edited. I just made this video with its script and everything else purely with a new Google Slides file. I figured that I just want a mini-series where I just talk about whatever I find interesting enough to bring up here. Of course, I try my best to keep everything gaming related here on this channel, so this generally also applies to this series. You can feel free to request me to talk about anything else in the future, because there's a strong possibility that I'll be talking about it if it captures my interest just enough. So yeah, this is a mini-series of mine. Shouldn't expect this very often though. With all that being said, Sonic Colors is generally a game that I seem to be having an unpopular opinion on. So if you cannot accept any criticism towards this game, then I think it's a good idea for you to leave. I don't make these videos or my videos in general to offend anyone. I just generally try to analyze things and express my opinions. My history with Colors. So it's kind of funny looking back on how I got to see this game for the first time and how I generally found it. So if I remember correct, the year was around either 2010 or 2011. I was basically looking for a Sonic figure that I could play with because I was basically still just a kid. The problem was that Sonic toys at this time wasn't sold in Sweden. This wasn't a time when I watched a lot of stop motion movies, and I was mainly watching Sonic stop motion series of all sorts at that being specific. So yeah, this was before I got into game reviews and gaming rants on YouTube. Anyways, those stop motions made me truly want to get a collection of Sonic figures, just like the guys who made the stop motion videos often had. I told my parents about how it's impossible to find Sonic toys in Sweden pretty much, as there were Sonic X figures being sold before, but when that was a thing I wasn't aware of it, and generally they were rare from what I can remember. But I could be wrong, that's more of an assumption in all honesty, but I do still have a big self-belief that I have been generally well updated with all the Sonic figures that were ever available in Sweden. Dad didn't believe me when I said that there's clearly no Sonic toys around Sweden. He decided to take me to a GameStop to prove me wrong and whatnot. So we did. Then there we found it. A Sonic figure along with Wisps next to him with the Sonic Colors game on the back of the package. I was shocked to see it, and we quickly ran to it only to find out that it came along with the game, because from the long distance we didn't see it was a game on the back. I quickly realized that it's for the Wii, as I could see from its cover. I wanted the toy badly anyway, so Dad bought me it in the end. Because the figure wasn't really made to be moved a lot, I obviously broke it in the end. Its leg fell off first, and both legs fell off, if I remember correctly. It could have been just one, but whatever. I digress. I mean, what did you expect? I was dying for Sonic figure for years. So of course, even if I got one that is sensitive as all hell, I'd move its arms and legs like crazy. Because I had no Wii, I was planning on getting one so I could play the game. Because of the fact that I wasn't going to get a Wii probably anyways, as stated by my mom, she suggested me to just give it to a friend of mine which owned a Wii. I originally just planned to go home to her to play it there, but I realized I wasn't in the need for, owning the game anyways. I don't know as to why I felt this way, but whatever, I guess. So once I told her at her home that she could keep it, she was very happy. Once we started playing the game together, I started to find Sonic's control in the 3D areas very slippery. And this is coming from a guy that had played Sonic Heroes on PC before this game. My first time playing Colors. I didn't seem to have any proper patience with the game. I don't know if it was due to me not being properly used to the Wii controller, but I do think it had generally more to do with the fact on how I just wasn't happy with how loose, Sonic controlled, and felt. I let my friend play far more than me because I just didn't have proper patience with the game, with its controls, constantly fight against me. Whenever I did start to play more of the game, it was because my friend left me to have my own turns. I quickly noticed that the game seemed to have had more focus on 2D, and I wasn't a fan of this. I generally didn't feel the way the game felt. It was really off to me. The 2D sections especially bothered me. I couldn't tell back then what it was quite well, but there was just something really off for it to me with these 2D sections, with their overall design. The first stage wasn't something I was especially against in the game, as it did to me a fine job at combining speed and platforming in a rather fluid way, but the more the game progressed, the more underwhelming it became to me. I realized more and more that it had larger focus on platforming and blocks than anything else. My first time playing Colors. I didn't seem to have any proper patience with the game. I don't know if it was due to me not being properly used to the Wii controller, but I do think it had generally more to do with the fact on how I just wasn't happy with how loose Sonic controlled. I let my friend play far more than me because I just didn't have proper patience with the game, with its controls, constantly fight against me. Whenever I did start to play more of the game, it was because my friend let me to have my own turns. I quickly noticed that the game seemed to have had more focus on 2D, and I wasn't a fan of this. I generally didn't feel the way the game felt was right. It was really off to me on just how overall it felt. The 2D sections especially bothered me. I couldn't tell back then what it was quite well, but there was just something felt really off for me with these 2D sections. The first stage wasn't something I was especially against in the game, as it did to me a fine job at combining speed and platforming in a rather fluid way. But the more the game progressed, the more underwhelming it became to me. I realized more and more that it had larger focus on platforming and blocks being combined with the platforming itself than anything else. Sonic game. What Sonic game? Looking back now, it's not hard to tell as to why Sonic Colors felt very off to me when I did get the chance to play it. I'll get to that in a bit. Often when the game is being criticized for its 2D, there will be that one person that state, well, they follow the classic Sonic games philosophy. Those games had lots of platforming too. 2D was even added clearly due to how Sonic Team wanted this game to work well with classic Sonic fans. Well, if you know me well enough, you know that I did play Sonic 1 and 2 when I was a kid. Clearly I wasn't liking Sonic Colors anyways. When I think about the classic games, I think about slopes, loop-de-loops, hills, springs, spikes, all of these crazy things that make Sonic the freaking Hedgehog. In Sonic Colors 2D sections, all I see is blocks and platforms, all pretty much floating in the air. It back when I first played the game and still now makes me want to fall asleep in a way. Just thinking about it also makes me kind of feel sleepy. It makes me feel sleepy, that's what I'm essentially saying. Yeah. While Sonic 1 is guilty for many slow-paced levels like Marble Zone, they did still not have nearly as many blocks and obvious platforming as Sonic Colors does. What the frick does this have anything to do with this? It's not Sonic, it's Mario. Look, I get it. It's a game that is supposed to appeal more to Nintendo players, but from an objective view, it doesn't change the fact that Sonic isn't really Sonic in this game. What I find odd though, even if we were to go by that argument, is that it doesn't change the fact that Sonic Colors for the DS actually does play like a Sonic game. A Sonic-ish game on a Nintendo system, so why does the console version have to be the way it is? The irony is that Sonic Colors for the DS also seems to be the game that is rather well received, generally speaking. It's just it's very unnoticed most of the time because it's not on a console and whatnot. Another thing that felt very off, dare I say perhaps even awkward, is the way Sonic's character was treated in the game. His new personality wasn't something I was a big fan of. Back then I couldn't tell what it was, but nowadays I understand what it was that did bother me with this new Sonic. However, I'm sure that you have by this point kept up with my recent videos to know where I'm coming from. If not, I'd advise you to give my Sonic demographic analyze a look to understand what I'm talking about. Not to mention how the moment Sonic faced towards the camera and broke the fourth wall, I went double TF in my head, and I even questioned to my friend who was sitting next to me about that whole thing. She didn't seem to care. She even went as far as to show how little she did care about the cutscenes, that she actually did skip the cutscene where Sonic did break the fourth wall. Honestly, looking at Sonic Colors' plot right now as a nearly grown-up man, I honestly understand why she did what she did. I just couldn't get it off in my head on how off it felt to me to see Sonic do the breaking the fourth wall thing. In other games, Sonic had never done that, so I suppose that is as to why it felt so off for me. To be fair though, I did watch Sonic X when I was a kid, and Sonic did break the fourth wall once in that show. I wasn't ever bothered by it, and still am not. So I suppose it has more to do with the matter of the fact more on how Sonic did it, more than something along the lines of the fact that he did do it for the first place. So yeah, here I am now. Still haven't actually revisited the game since then. With an actual controller, of course. I just kind of gave up on it. Not really, but I digress. Long after that, when I did get to hear about this game again, either via YouTube and whatnot, I did feel like playing the game again. However, I believe that what I really did do was build up an image in my mind on fooling myself into thinking how much I did enjoy the game on my first run, instead of actually being honest with myself. Probably has a lot to do with how as humans often have the natural instinct in our minds that unless we do have the same opinion as the largest group has, that our opinion serves no real meaning or value. This game just gives the wrong impressions from the trailers, constantly stating it's full of speed when in reality it's not. I don't have a problem with the game being not a very Sonic-ish Sonic game. I have a bigger problem with the fact on how it self-promoted itself as a Sonic-ish Sonic game with the trailers. Also, how I generally felt and still feel that the game reviewers made the game seem far more exciting for my flavor than it is in reality for me. I probably would have went far easier on the game if it didn't self-promote itself for being something it's clearly not. But it didn't, so in the end my first run was affected very negative. But hey, when I do revisit this game to review it, at least I'll be aware of what I'm putting myself in for. That's all from me. Hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.